Do you wish this was you, enthralled in a novel, soaking up each and every word, plot twists out the wazoo, questioning your life, maybe reading a book that makes you tear up, feel some type of way? Well, you've come to the right place.
Hi. Ironically enough, the book that I'm pretending to read for the sake of that intro, I'm not even actually reading currently, but maybe one day. Hello and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. Today, me and Sochi are going to help you find some books that actually interest you and get you into reading, because a lot of the times people don't get into reading because they don't know what they're interested in or what they gravitate towards. They just want something interesting to read, right? So this video is going to help you find what intrigues you the most in books and hopefully kickstart your reading journey. If this is your first time here, make sure to check out the description for all of my links to my Patreon and my storygraph. That is where I track my reading. So if you are interested in the books that I'm currently reading or what I've rated books, all of that will be on storygraph. And once again, this is your reminder to get a library card. That is like the number one tip I have if you want to get into reading. A library card is free and reading is free. So if money is something that you're kind of tackling and you don't want to spend a bunch of money to buy books that you may or may not be interested in, I always use the library to check out a book if I don't know if I'm going to be interested in it. Read it from the library first. You can even get the Kindle app and get books sent to Libby, which is basically ebooks, but like from the library. You can also use Cloud Library. There's a lot of different options. And there's also, of course, audiobooks. So once again, this is your reminder to get a library card because once again, reading is free. Okay, so I broke up this video into 6 different parts of 6 different categories that personally got me into reading and helped me find what it is that I like in a book, because most likely you're gonna have to read a little bit of a different variety of different type of genres in order to see what you're interested in. So let's start off with the first category. This is going to be like the easiest category, the easiest way to get into reading, because this definitely counts and I definitely do read these type of books very often, and that is graphic novels. Now I have a ton of different options for graphic novels. Once again, I do check them out from the library as well, so a lot of them I don't have, but I'm just gonna read off a couple of them, give you a short synopsis, and see if any of these tickle your fancy. Then I highly encourage you to check them out. So the first one we have is Piggy, Permanent Detention. Something that's really cool about graphic novels as well is that a lot of these are self-published, so it is a great way to support like local authors or just like a small publishing house in general. But Piggy, Permanent Detention, it is the cutest, kind of like spooky adventure-esque type of book where it's about like these 2 friends that are going on an adventure to basically defeat this like evil pig demon like robot thing that is destroying their town, and their town is full of zombies, so they're just trying to survive, and they're like little kids as well, so it's just so much fun. And they're all like animals, they're like kid animal things. I mean, the main villain is a pig. It sounds confusing, but just trust me, it's a fun time. And the second one just came out recently. Highly recommend. Next is another one I just read recently, and that is Expedition Backyard. This is one of the coziest, cutest things I've ever seen in my whole life. Like, I wish there was more and that this was a series, but it's just a one-off book. If you're the author of this book and you're watching this, please make another one. But this one is just about a mole and some other woodland creature, and they are just going on an adventure. They're discovering new things in their forest, in their hometown, and it's just about them adapting to new circumstances. A lot of these graphic novels are good to kind of slow things down, especially to read in between books if you need like a palate cleanser. If you just want to fun like Sunday read. So easy, so much fun. Next, we have another beautiful, cozy graphic novel, The Tea Dragon Society. I wish I could reread this series for the first time again. It is so much fun. It's just about this girl who's learning to make tea, and like tea is basically, it doesn't come in the form of plants, it comes in the form of dragons. So it's basically this girl learning how to like harvest the tea from these dragons, and she's befriending them. And the colors for this book and the cover and the story and everything about it is so beautiful. That's like my main thing that I look for in graphic novels, is the color palette, and this one is impeccable. Next, we have one that you've probably heard of, and it is Heartstopper. They just made this a Netflix series, so it's also something that you can read and then watch the series afterwards. But this is about Charlie and Nick, and they are in high school together and they become friends and eventually something more. And it's just about high school, but like in a heartwarming and like not traumatizing way. It's like a good version of being in high school and being gay. Next, we have another cozy kind of like woodland-ish type of vibe, and that is Bug Boys. Now, I've been avoiding reading the second book in this series because I don't want to leave this world just yet, but it's very similar to Expedition Backyard, where it's about two friends. In this case, it's two beetles, and they just go on adventures. They're so cute, and this too is like the drawing for these little bugs, and this whole book and series are just so freaking cute, and it's a perfect way to wind down after a busy day. Okay, and then last we have Garlic and the Vampire. This is a good, I'd say like maybe fall time read, but it's good all throughout. There's two books, Garlic and the Witch is the second one, and this follows Garlic, who's a very nervous garlic bulb. Like she's literally like, everyone in this world are vegetables. They're vegetables. So it's following Garlic, and in Garlic and the Vampire, there's a vampire that is in their neighborhood, and everyone's like, well, you're Garlic and vampires are afraid of garlic, so like you go confront him and kill him, and she's so scared and nervous. It's super cute. Color palette, like I said, 10 out of 10. Okay, next we're getting into short novels. Now, when I mean short, I'm thinking like under 200 pages, and there's still a good time. All right, so I'm not going to recommend you a book that I just did not like. And probably the easiest to start off with is, and kind of see like what kind of prose you're into, is poetry. Those are always going to be short books. Poetry collections are always going to be about like 150 pages. So the first one that I have is Dearly by Margaret Atwood. I love Margaret Atwood. I kind of realized I liked kind of classic dystopian novels. So when I read The Handmaid's Tale, I really liked how Margaret Atwood basically wrote. I don't know how else to describe it. I just like how she wrote. I liked what she had to say. So I picked up this poetry collection, and it is just, it's very feminine, and it was just very refreshing. So this one is a big recommendation. I feel like I don't talk about it enough, but it is a great, great read. Next, we have a book I just recently read, and that is The Most by Jessica Anthony. Now, this one is kind of, you're gonna hear the plot and be like, that sounds literally so boring. But if it sounds interesting to you, then you're gonna have to like dive deeper into it and see like why this is interesting to you. So this book, it takes place in like the 50s or the 60s, and it's about a couple, and the woman wants to spend all of her time in the pool. She just won't get out of the pool. So you kind of deal with like, okay, is she depressed? Is she like, it's like kind of like a character study. And I really like books like that, where it's like no plot really. It's just really delving into like why people are doing the things that they do and like what leads them to their decisions. That's what this book explores. So if that sounds interesting to you, this is a very short read, and I finished this in like a day. Super, super interesting time. Next, we have Slow Days, Fast Company by Eve Babbitt. This is a fictionalized account on Eve Babbitt's life. She was kind of just like, I don't know, a famous person in the 60s. I don't really know how she was famous. I know she dated a bunch of very famous celebrities. I think she dated like Jim Morrison and like Harrison Ford and stuff. So I guess that's how she's famous. I'm not really sure. But she's an artist from the 60s, and she kind of talks about, you know, her life and like the people she dated, the experiences she has, the things she's seen. And like I said, it's fiction, but if you know, you know, it's basically nonfiction, but she just had to call it fiction in order to really spill the tea and not get sued. Next is another Margaret Atwood book, and that is the Penelopiad. Never really know how to pronounce that, but this is a Greek retelling of the story of Odysseus's wife, Penelope. I didn't know the story of, you know, Penelope and Odysseus. You don't have to know that going in. It's very short, and basically the story is Odysseus goes off to war, and while he's off at war, all these suitors come for Penelope, and they're like, hey, Odysseus is probably dead, so you may as well get with me. And she's like, no, 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 I think he's coming back. I'm trying not to lose out hope, basically. Again, it's like another character study. Again, it is fiction because it's kind of Margaret Atwood's approach and how she thinks Penelope would have acted in that situation, would have felt, probably what she thought in that situation. And it's pretty sad. Once again, I read this in like a day as well, but it's very interesting. Okay, so the next one is I Feel Bad About My Neck by Nora Ephron. Nora Ephron is like a humorist, writer, director. She wrote a lot of kind of like the 90s, 80s rom-coms, like When Harry Met Sally and like Sleepless in Seattle. And I think You've Got Mail. She's a very famous writer, and this is a nonfiction book about aging and talking about how you can do all these things to basically look like you're not aging, and basically the wisdom you get from aging. The first giveaway of how old you actually are is your neck. I thought this was so funny. This is kind of like a collection of essays. It's not really like a continuous book, like this happened, next chapter, and then this happened. It's just kind of like accounts that she has throughout her life about growing up. All right, and lastly in this short category is The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. I love this book. I love this book. I've reread it multiple times, and this is again another character study. This book is one of the first books that I've read when I got more into reading, when I was first trying to see what I liked, what I didn't like. And something about this is it's a character study, and it's from the perspective of a child. It's about this young girl who is basically just describing the things that go around her, but like through the child's lens. So you're reading it as an adult and you're like, oh, that's what's happening. But she doesn't realize it because she's a kid, right? Again, it's like character study, not really slow. It's definitely, these books are definitely fast paced, I would say, because they are shorter, but they do pack a punch and they do have a lot to say. Okay, next are books that the plot is the thing that got me the most, right? So they're definitely page churny, like they keep you wanting to find out what happens next. So the first book that I have in this category is Hum by Helen Phillips. This is about a woman who undergoes this procedure to alter her face so it's unrecognizable to security cameras. So it's in a world where robots and AI is just like the norm, and it's everywhere. They're out and about, they're your civil servants, they're your police officers, they're everywhere. It just spirals from there. It just gets really messy. Like I was not expecting for this to go where it went, but I feel like this had a lot to say. And this is also a pretty short book. It's about like 200 pages, but this I read in like about 2 days, maybe. I just had to know what was going next. And the chapters are so short that it made it so readable. Next, we have The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. This is a debut novel, and it came out last year, and it was actually up for a Goodreads Reader's Choice Award. So this is about a college girl, and she is not fond of her mother's new boyfriend, but she is fond of his blue eyes, but in a carnivorous way, I guess I will say. That's pretty much all I'll say on that. It spirals. I'm sure you can pick up what I'm putting down. This, I just had to know what was going next because it was so messy. I feel like I didn't really know how it was going going to end, but I was satisfied with how it ended personally. Next, we have The Bandit Queens by Perini Schroff. So this has a very funny premise. It's about a woman whose husband goes missing and no one knows where he is, but everyone just assumes for some reason that she killed him. I don't know why, but they just think that. You know, this woman, she's like, okay, fine, like think that if you want to. Like, I'm not gonna correct you because it kind of keeps people away. Fine and dandy to have that. But then other women in her village start to ask her if she can help them kill their husbands. Again, as you can probably tell, it gets very messy and it is just so much fun to read. I just had to know where it was going and how everything was gonna come together. Something that really made this stand out was the characters were actually like full people. They weren't just like two-dimensional random, you know, NPCs. Next, we have a book that I honestly wasn't too fond of because of where it went, but the premise itself is interesting enough, and if it gets you into reading, it gets you into reading. I know a lot of people really like this book, and that is Bunny by Mona Awad. This, I will say, is I wasn't too fond of the ending because like I'd say the most interesting part was all leading up to it. So the premise is this girl is her first year of college and she meets this like kind of cliquey mean girls group. They call themselves bunnies or bunny, and they're kind of like in a weird cult. Basically, they all have some sort of hyperfixation on some weird like sexual thing. I can't really describe more because it will give it away, but it is interesting because it gets very twisted. It's a little gory, so there's a little bit of horror aspect in there as well. So it's very The Craft with like Mean Girls, basically. Although The Craft is basically like Mean Girls, but spooky. Next, we have Outlawed by Anna North. This is one of the very first books I read getting into reading, but it's about this woman who can't have a baby. She's married and she can't have a baby. Like, she just genetically cannot have children. And it's like old Western times, so people are like, oh my God, you're a witch. Like, if you're, if you can't have children, then like, what good are you, basically? So she leaves her town and like goes to live her life as an outlaw and joins a gang. So much fun. This book was so much fun. It was very readable. It is like kind of like a Western-y type of book, so like shit was going down all the time, and I just loved it. It made me more interested in reading like Westerns, but more like feminine Westerns like that, because that's the vibe that I like. Okay, next is one of my favorite books of 2024, and that is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kluwer, I think. Not really sure how to pronounce his last name. But this premise really got me. Like, as soon as I heard this premise, I was like, I need to read this book immediately. So it's about this couple who move into a new home. This family comes and knocks on their door and they say, hey, we used to live here. Is it okay if I show my kids around? Like, the dad just wants to walk down, you know, nostalgia lane. And the couple's like, sure, I guess you can look around. And they never leave. They just refuse to leave. It is personally my nightmare. But the turn that this book takes, that is a scratch on the surface of like what this book actually becomes. It is crazy. This book is crazy. I'm speechless. Like, I cannot even describe. It's literally a movie. I think they are making this into a movie. I am so excited for that. I can't even tell you how excited I am. Please read this book. It is so interesting. And I like sped through this book because I just needed to know where it was going, what was happening. And the ending was honestly perfect to me. I love that ending. This was like a 5 out of 5 reading experience for me. Okay, and lastly, I left this kind of vague, but I just wrote down any Riley Sager book. So Riley Sager is a horror thriller mystery-ish-esque type of writer. So the books that I've read from him are Final Girls, and one that I read last year that was also a 5 out of 5 for me personally. Even though looking back on it, I probably wouldn't give it a 5 out of 5, but I was in a reading slump and this book got me out of it because it was so readable and I just needed to know what was gonna happen next, and that is Middle of the Night. So this is about a young boy named Ethan, I believe, and he is having a little slumber party with his friend, and his friend goes missing. The story jumps back from that timeline and from, you know, Ethan as an adult when he's like in his 30s or something, and he goes back to his hometown and basically relives all these memories and tries to solve where his friend went that night. Okay, so those are all of the book suggestions that I have for you. I'm hoping you found something interesting from this. If you have any bookish goals or ideas, let me know so I can make a video and help you out with your reading journey. I want to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons that are listed on the screen right now. You are all so amazing and I love each and every single one of you. Okay, so thank you guys for coming along with me on this journey. I hope that you guys got something out of this video. I hope that it was interesting, and if you stayed this long, you're really hot and sexy. I dare you to give it a like if you did stay this long. That would also be sexy. Thank you guys for coming along with me on this journey. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all of that jazz, and as always, thanks for watching.